Hey everyone, and welcome to this deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at The Catcher in the Rye,
Ah,
specifically these excerpts about Holden Caulfield.
right.
So we're going to be exploring his character through his own words.
Yeah, that's one of the most interesting things about this book, right? Is that first-person narration.
Absolutely. Like you're right there in his head.
Yeah, it's almost like he's right there with you, telling you the
Right.
story.
It's so intimate.
Yeah.
Right? And right away you get that unique voice.
Oh, yeah, so
Yeah.
distinct. Full of slang and judgments and.
Totally. And he's so funny. Like I love that line early on where he says, "I'm the most terrific liar you ever saw in your life. It's awful."
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's like a confession. But he's also kind of proud of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's that direct address, too, that it's like he's talking directly to the reader.
It pulls you right in. You become part of his world.
Okay, so to set the scene a bit,
Mm-hmm.
the excerpts cover Holden's expulsion from Pensy Prep.
Right, this fancy boarding school.
Yeah. And then his few days wandering around New York City before he has to go home.
Okay, so it's kind of this in-between time for him, right? Like he's lost in this limbo.
Exactly. And it's post-World War II America, too, so
Things are a little uneasy, yeah.
definitely. I think that adds to his angst.
Oh, for sure. I mean, this book is a classic Bildungsroman, a coming-of-age story.
Right. He's trying to figure out who he is in this world that feels,
Phony.
yeah, that's his favorite word, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everything and everyone is phony.
Especially the adults. It's like he's looking for something authentic and genuine, and no one seems to measure up.
Like that headmaster, Mr. Haas.
Yeah.
He really gets under Holden's skin.
Yeah, he sees right through that kind of put-on niceness, especially with the parents.
So is it fair to say that this whole phony thing is a kind of defense mechanism for Holden?
I think so.
Yeah.
By pushing everyone away, he protects himself from getting hurt, you know?
Okay, and that really comes through in his relationships too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The excerpts focus on a few key people. Stradlater, Ackley, Jane Gallagher.
And Sally Hayes.
Right. Let's
Yeah.
start with Stradlater.
Okay, so Stradlater is Holden's roommate at Pensy.
Basically the stereotypical jock.
Yeah, good looking, popular, and Holden, of course, thinks he's a complete phony.
Of course. Which makes it even more interesting that Stradlater is going on a date with Jane Gallagher.
Right, someone Holden really cares about.
Even though they haven't seen each other in a while.
It's clear that Holden has these idealized memories of Jane.
Yeah, like when they used to play checkers together.
And she wouldn't move her kings out of the back row.
It's a very sweet, innocent image.
But then Stradlater taking her out on a date kind of shatters that image for Holden.
Right. It brings up all this jealousy and insecurity.
He even tries calling Jane,
Yeah.
but
She's not home.
it's like this recurring theme with Holden, right? Always missing connections.
And then there's that disastrous date with Sally Hayes.
Oh, man. Talk about a train wreck.
They just can't see eye to eye on anything.
And Holden just ends up calling her a phony, too.
Of course.
It's like he wants something real, but he doesn't even know what that looks like.
He's definitely searching for something.
Yeah, but what is it?
Yeah, and that's what makes all this wandering around New York so interesting.
Right, it's like he's just bouncing from one encounter to the next, hoping for something.
Hoping for some kind of connection, I think.
Yeah, like those girls at the Lavender Room, remember?
Mhm.
He tries to chat them up,
But
but
just goes nowhere.
then he ends up at the Wicker Bar getting drunk.
Oh, yeah. That whole scene is a mess.
Totally. And then there's Sunny the prostitute.
That's a really revealing encounter.
In what way?
Well, here he is actively trying to connect, you know?
Right. He even says what he really wants is to talk.
But it's like they're speaking different languages.
Not just literally, right?
Yes.
Like emotionally,
That's
too.
exactly. They just can't connect.
It just emphasizes how lonely he is.
And that's when he retreats into those memories of Allie.
His younger brother who died.
Right. Allie represents this kind of lost innocence for Holden.
Yeah, like a time before everything became so phony.
Remember Allie's baseball mitt?
The one with all the poems written on it?
Yeah, it's like a symbol of that lost innocence.
Yeah. And Holden talks to Allie even though he's gone.
Especially when he's feeling really down.
It's like Allie's the only one who really gets him.
Which is why his relationship with Phoebe is so important.
His little sister.
Right. She's so full of life and energy.
Yeah, and she sees right through all of Holden's BS.
But she still loves him unconditionally.
Their scenes together are just so sweet.
Like when he gives her his red hunting hat.
Yeah, that's a really powerful moment.
It's more than just a hat, you know?
It's like a part of him.
Exactly. And she accepts it without judgment.
It's that kind of pure connection that he's been craving.
Okay, so let's talk about Mr. Antolini,
Holden's old English teacher.
the one he visits late at night.
That's a pivotal scene, right?
Totally. Mr. Antolini sees that Holden's in a bad place.
Yeah, he's worried about him falling.
This metaphorical fall,
Like a loss of innocence.
Yeah, exactly. And he even quotes that poem about the wise man,
Who does not die.
right? What do you think that means?
I don't know. It's a tough one.
It's definitely open to interpretation.
But it's clear that Mr. Antolini cares about Holden.
He's trying to help him find his way.
And then, of course, there's that incident.
The one that makes Holden leave so abruptly.
Yeah, we don't really know what happened.
It's really ambiguous.
Some people think Mr. Antolini made a pass at Holden.
Others think Holden just misinterpreted things.
Whatever happened, it just adds to that feeling of unease.
Like Holden can't trust anyone.
And that carries over to those final scenes.
Right, like when he's at the museum but doesn't want to go in.
Almost like he's afraid to face the past.
And what about that broken record he keeps talking about?
What do you think that symbolizes?
I don't know, maybe his broken state of mind?
Or the fragility of innocence?
It's interesting to think about.
And then there's Phoebe showing up with the suitcase.
Ready to go wherever he goes.
It's such a powerful image of loyalty.
And love.
It makes you wonder what's going to happen to them.
Does he find what he's looking for?
Does he avoid that terrible fall?
It's a real cliffhanger. Yeah, it really makes you want to keep reading, right?
Definitely. I mean, even these excerpts are so rich.
There's just so much to unpack.
Like we've talked about, his alienation, his struggles.
But there's also this real vulnerability to Holden.
Yeah, under all that cynicism.
Which is what makes him so relatable, I think.
Totally. Like he's flawed. He makes mistakes.
But he's just trying to figure things out, like all of us.
That feeling of being an outsider, that's something we can all relate to, I think.
Absolutely. It's a universal experience.
And that phoniness he talks about so much.
Yeah, we've all encountered that in some form.
For sure.
Yeah.
It's interesting to think about all of this in the context of post-war America.
Yeah, the country was going through a lot of changes.
There was this sense of disillusionment.
And I think Holden's rebellion against the phony adult world reflects that.
That makes a lot of sense.
It's like he's a symbol of that anxiety and uncertainty.
So even though Catcher in the Rye was published decades ago,
It still speaks to us today.
because those feelings of being lost, searching for something real.
So time
Absolutely. So if you're looking for a book that will make you think, make you feel,
and maybe even challenge your own worldview.
then The Catcher in the Rye is definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, it's a powerful book. It stays with you.
And these excerpts have just given us a glimpse.
There's so much more to explore in the full novel.
So what stood out to you most in these excerpts? What resonated with you?
That's a good question. And what do you think happens to Holden after all of this? Does he find what he's looking for? Does he manage to avoid that terrible fall?
Yeah, maybe the full novel holds some answers. Or maybe it just leads to more questions.
Well, that's the beauty of great literature, isn't it? It gives us something to think about.
Something to wrestle with.
It keeps the conversation going.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into The Catcher in the Rye.
And the world of Holden Caulfield.
We'll see you next time for another adventure in ideas.